on your seat, I should say, you should have a printed handout. We're going to do a little activity with this, as well as there's some brochures on our online content, and also a little form for you to fill out. And if you fill that out, we're going to be sending you a free trial of all of our products, as well as, if you haven't already gotten it from our booth, we have these beautiful posters of our award-winning illustrations, and they're actually a series. So this is our first one of the series, and the one is a macro each body system. So next will be a part of that other poster. But so I'll give those out, and if you just fill out that form for us, that'd be great. So does anyone else need any handouts? And the activity,
are you gonna?
Yeah. Your hand.
Behind you. Everybody keeps walking away from it.
Okay, good. Okay, you might have to share the activity sheet for the person next to you, sorry. Well, we're thrilled to have such a big crowd. You never know. Last we were in Louisville for the other NSTA, and it was a lot smaller, so we're thrilled that everybody's here. If you don't know, Adam Education actually is based here in Atlanta. So this is our hometown. We've been around for over 25 years, always focused on anatomy, physiology, human body systems, and health education. So we're really well known for our old CDs. Those no longer exist. We're all online, web-based products. My name is Bridget Benware. I work with strategic partnerships, and one of our partnerships is with working with different professors around. We get all of our content written by medical experts, and one of our medical experts, he's actually a professor, is Mr. Dr. Schaeffer from Harford College, and he's Associate Anatomy and Physiology Professor.
Right.
So we are thrilled to have him here. He flew out from Maryland and escaped the terrible storm. So he had power and was able to get out, so we're thrilled. So I'm going to let him, he's going to be sharing basically best practices for how to teach anatomy and physiology. How many of you are middle school teachers?
Do what to them?
We have a couple of you here, and then the rest are high school, I'm assuming? Okay, so he's really good at middle school teachers who definitely will pick up some tips. He's definitely going to focus more on that higher level of teaching that full anatomy physiology course, but human body's human body. So you really can learn a lot from Dr. Schaeffer, as he's been doing this for a long time, and also one of our many authors of our products as well. So I will turn it over to you, Scott.
Good. Yeah, but I have to be on a plane at 5:15, so I was really excited to get started and get moving and get back out the door. Hopefully everything's still on target. We didn't have any problems leaving, but going back, you know, might be a little bit of a different story. Really, I think I could probably learn as much from you if you were all standing up here as you could from me. I've been teaching anatomy and physiology at the community college level this is my 12th year, and I was an adjunct for 6 of those, and at one point I was adjuncting for 4 different schools during one semester. And so talk about your prep work, you know. Making sure you had some schools, the labs were all set up. We had guys that were in charge of it. We just had to walk in and it was ready to go. And other schools, there was no support staff, you know, and you had to get there and just work with what was available. So, so from a best practices standpoint, really I'm just giving you some of my experiences, and with a broad range of classroom type settings that I've encountered in the past, maybe some of that will sound familiar to you or ring a bell to you. So from a course challenge standpoint, I mean, I'd like it to be interactive, and I want you all to be able to share with me. So don't hesitate to ask questions or jump in, you know, or stop me at any given time. The challenge is times are changing. Just looking around the room and seeing who has tablets on the table and smartphones on the table, and who's really listening to me and who's tweeting the friends, you know, at the end of the. Like probably some of these challenges are the same ones that you're seeing at school, and I know at our school. Slow but sure, textbooks are disappearing. So the goal is to get students to engage, and to get them to care, to get them to actually physically put their hands on and do stuff. So I was sharing with Bridget earlier about 3 years back. My son now, he's a senior in high school, and about 3 years ago it was like National Education Day or something along those lines, where you could take your parents with you, like take your parents to school day, and he actually wanted me to go, which was nice. He wasn't embarrassed to hold me in a corner or something along those lines, you know. And I was real excited because one of the first classes of the day was a nutrition class, and I also teach nutrition at Harford. And so I thought, well, let's see what they're learning, you know, here at this 9th grade level. And it was horrible. We went in there and sat with, you know, 13-year-old boys and girls, pre-men, pre-women, with raging hormones all over the place, right? At 7:45 in the morning, looking at a PowerPoint presentation with not even that little bit of red or logo. It was just a white background with words. And the teacher read the slide and then would advance to the next one. And, can you go back? I didn't finish copying. All we did for 45 minutes was copy everything that was, there was nothing relevant, you know, to his carbohydrate lecture. There was nothing relevant to you know, your daily life, you know, how your body uses carbohydrates, the danger of eating too many of them, what are complex and simple. It was just 45 minutes at 8 o'clock in the morning of sitting there listening to, you know, it was horrible, in my opinion. So how do we get students to get their hands on stuff if you don't all necessarily have the resources at your fingertips, be that like lab equipment? Some of you have access to physical models, like plastic type models that, you know, will come apart layer by layer. Some of you might do some dissection, be it maybe like a general bio, you might have a worm or a frog in there maybe, right? Or maybe a human bio, you have your fetal pig or something along those lines. But that costs money to keep up and to replace, and it's one of those never-ending drains, you know, on the school. And now with everybody, many kids go in with like smartphone type technology and iPads and so forth. What can we do with them to get the stuff at their fingertips and get them to be able to work independently, to get them to be able to work in groups, and then to get the professor or the teacher to actually be able to integrate with them as well? So whether you use a textbook or not, the package that I put together, I'm telling you, it's my best practices, it's how I do things, and not too many people have the luxury of having a publisher say, here, why don't you go write a book that you would like to use, right? So I'm going to reference that book because it's how I brought all my pieces of the puzzle together to give me my ideal lab. But certainly you could do it just with online searches, and you could come up together with your own handouts or send students to different websites. You don't need this product per se, but I'm going to continue to reference it because I put it together the way that it works for me in the classroom. Okay? So when I am in a lab setting, the way I run it, another benefit of being at a community college, I'll say, and being a full-time faculty member is the ability to mentor other adjuncts and to get to see their best practices and sometimes just practices, you know, maybe not best ones. Hear student rumblings in the hall, of which some you can believe and some you know that you can't, you know, but what do they like? And you'll hear things like, this teacher doesn't come from behind the podium. All they do is stand there, and they don't show us anything. And they say, open up to exercise 9.2 and go ahead and do it. And there's real no direction, you know, how do they go and do it? What do they need? So when I get into the classroom, today the example that we brought with is part of our digestive chapter. And at my school, probably like most high schools too, I would guess, there's different levels of A&P that we offer. So we have, at my community college, A&P for like essentially pre-nursing is what it amounts to. And then there's a different level for like your dental hygienists or your like paraprofessionals, medical assistants, those types of things. And then we have like a real non-major, almost like a human body cursory overview. And my thought is at the high school, at least the stuff I see at in our high school areas, sometimes there's a pure A&P class, like a general science. Sometimes there's kind of honors-based classes, and then sometimes you'll just stick in, you know, different segments or different body systems in your general biology type class or whatnot. So what I ran into, the problem I ran into at my school was, when I first got there, we were using the same lab materials for all of our classes. And our lab book was like $129, something along those lines. So for the A&P students, they used it 2 semesters in a row. And we still didn't use the whole book. You know, we didn't use every exercise. And now we had these non-majors that were coming in and paying $120. And we'd get to the lab exercise and say, well, don't do this, or don't worry about that, or that's too intense, you know. And then they're all wondering why they're paying $129, right? So I tried to come up with a product that, that gives instructors flexibility and that can tailor the lessons down to the level or up to the level of the students that you're working with. So we go over the topic. So in this case it would be the digestive system. The general overview, you know, what are the essential components of the digestive system, and then as we go down and look at the images, which is what I do next. Now I'm fortunate at my school that we have an ample model base. So, but we don't have enough models for every person to use, you know, in fact not even maybe, I think we have 3 torsos, complete torsos in our lab, and we have 24 students in there. So if you're trying to look at a stomach model from the torso, you have 24 students looking at 3. So we needed something else to do in addition to those models. And even before I got here 6 years ago, we were using the Atom. It wasn't online at the time, it was the CDs, but we're using virtual dissection. So when it comes time for practical exams with our students, we have models that they need to go around and identify structures and so forth. But since we don't have enough models to set up the whole lab, we also use images from our Atom image bank. And so this gives them an opportunity then, and you, with the student, to go over the actual images that they'll be tested on as compared to, well, go out and find it on your own and let me know what you come up with. So once I review everything with them, show them what I expect them to know, then they have hands-on time to do whatever they need to do. So the models, of course, we have to share, and then we'll break up into small groups with the computers. Now, I don't know if I don't think it's a leak per se, but in the pipeline where there's an actual app that's being developed, isn't there, for AIA?
Yeah, down the road.
Right? It's not here, but it's you know, soon it'll be convenient enough that you know, depending how your school's connected wirelessly or your actual students are connected wirelessly, you'll even have better access. The label time, I'll go over that with you in a little bit. One of the additional problems that I had using lab-based materials at some of the schools that I worked at is one particular school I was at, we didn't use any lab materials at all. We had no lab book. The students had a textbook, and then in that textbook there were, you know, adequate images and so forth. But what we did is we made up a list of items that we wanted the students to find when they were in lab. So they came to the lab, they brought their textbook, and then we just had a list of things for them to find. But there was really no ancillary type materials to go along with that. And then on the flip side of things is when you go and invest in a lab book, and I still find my students are doing this today because this book's not out yet and I don't have the ability to use it, but we open up our lab book and you look at a picture and there might be, like on a digestive chapter that we'll look at in a little bit, there might be an image with 40 leader lines on there. And out of those 40 lines, you might want them to find 8 things. And then it runs into, well, do you need us to know this? Or do you need us to know that? You know? And then we'll go through and we'll kind of highlight together, make sure you can find this. And inevitably, someone's not listening and they come up to you and say, well, I can't find this structure. And then I tell them, but you don't need to find that structure, right? The structure's not on your list. So you want to find extra? That's awesome. You know, we'll encourage that. But focus on the stuff that, what's on the test? Right? That's, what do I need to know for the test? So I try to get them to go deeper than that. But anyway, some of that mumble jumble that's on all those pages makes that hard to do sometimes. So with this particular book, you'll notice when we look at the images, there's no lines on there. So you can go through and determine what it is you want them to find on those images. And then if you have access to the online product, then you can delve even deeper into that. So we go through and then have them label those images based on what I want that class to, what I need them to do. I also, from a student standpoint, see, for us, spelling's real important, and I don't know, you know, at what level that starts or stops at. My daughter, bless you, is an atrocious speller, horrible. And that's one of my anal points, you know, like if I think it's not spelled right, I'll go look it up just to make sure because that's just one of my things. My daughter, horrible. And I can remember going to parent-teacher conferences and talking about her spelling because she would get these things graded. I would look over them and say, but this is, I wouldn't tell her, but this is horrible looking. And the teachers didn't care. We're not worried about spelling, you know, we're just worried about sentence structure or whatever the case is. For us, spelling's huge because if we're developing nurses, at least, you know, at my community college, and it might be different, you know, based on where you're at, just knowing that it's that one that starts with the V is not enough. You know, it's the Viagra, Vioxx, Viagra, you know, like they're 2 different worlds, right? So my students, I find them oftentimes, and I warn them every semester, and they still do the same thing. They trick themselves into thinking that they know things, right? So I give them the list, and then they take the list and they go to their lab book, and then they try to sync up between what I need them to know and sift through all the information that's in that lab book. But instead of actually physically looking at the item, they sit there with their highlighter and they highlight all those labels in the book. And they think once they highlighted it, they found it. But really all they found was the name. They didn't find the structure because they never bothered looking to see where that line went. They just wanted to go and get their lab book synced up. And the problem, of course, is that they think they know it, and because they think they know it, they don't go back again. Because, well, I already did that, you know. And then when it comes time for a practical exam and we have this model out with a piece of tape and we say, name this thing, for our, well, I have different classes. For my A and P classes, they don't have any word bank. They just have to be able to pull that out of their head and tell them your patients don't have a word bank, right? So you'll see sometimes V and nothing else, you know, and they thought they knew it and they didn't. So one of the important things I try to get them to do is teach each other. So once you can take this list and you can show this list to somebody else, and then eventually you're not even using that list, you just have the model or the image and you show everything that you see on there, then the partner that you're working with will say, well, you got them all but 2, right? Or something along those lines. And once I can tell you what it is, now I own it. So instead of just highlighting and finding stuff, I make them go in and label it and write it down. And just, you know, helps ingrain it a little bit, I think. And then at the end, you know, there's always time for review, but I just walk around my lab and answer questions all class long. And then the lab practicals, I just explained how those were. So my non-major classes, they might have a word bank, but they'll have more words than they need, right? So if it's the practicals, 20 questions long, they might have a bank of 35 words or something along those lines. But for my healthcare professional majors, they just come in with a blank piece of paper and have to write everything down. So that's how I wanted my students to study. Give them the blank template and then have them write down what we need. So now I can use that same book and, well, I'm not sure what slide is next. I can use that same book and use it like from a differentiated learning type standpoint. Here's my list for this honors class, and here's the list maybe for this basic class. Okay. Is there anything on there that I didn't discuss yet? No, on that next one, Bridget, I'm sorry. No, that's okay. I mentioned how you're forced to write the name. The AIA, Atlas Interactive Anatomy Encyclopedia, we'll go through and kind of demo that product at the end. Our anatomy and physiology courses where I teach are considered general electives, and as such, students have to be able to demonstrate information literacy. So we need them to do some projects here or there. And so I try to have them do a project that they want to do, something that they want to learn about, and then it's not so, I don't know, so much of a punishment for them to have to go write something. Because in our courses we end up covering all the body systems, and you have to know somebody that has a respiratory issue, or you have to know somebody that has atherosclerosis, or you know, you have to have heard of somebody that has acne, or I mean, you know, depending who you're dealing with. So, so when we get to those particular organ systems and we start talking about those topics that are of interest to them, we give them the opportunity to explore and go and dig a little deeper and do some research. Okay. So the way that, again, in my classroom, we have, we're fortunate, we have 12 laptop computers. So while our model, our physical model supply isn't that deep, you know, we don't have a huge supply of models. At least from a computer standpoint, we can work in pairs, or our tables are round. We seat them in groups of 4. So what I'll do when it comes time to deal with group work is if we have 1 computer or 2 computers, instead of having, and the same thing happens like with histology when we look at microscopes, you know, we'll bring microscopes out and everybody puts the same slide on their microscope, and then we sit there, and at the end of, you know, an hour sometimes they've looked at 3 slides, where if each scope somebody put a different slide on there, once you found it, I don't test my students on finding things. I'll find it on the scope and have them tell me what it is. So if they found a particular tissue on their scope and somebody has another different one on that scope, as long as they can see it and identify it, I'm good. You know, I don't need them to find all those things. So I kind of split them up. You know, you're in charge of searching on the computer. You're in charge of making sure we're looking for things that are on the list. You're in charge of having that model and see, can we find on the model the same thing that we just found on the computer? And everybody's assigned their different tasks, and everybody's not sitting there so haphazard doing the same thing and falling all over each other. So it seems to work pretty good for us. But again, you have to have access to those materials. If you don't have online stuff, then you bring your images from, you know, you do the same thing with your book. You have your textbook, and probably you wouldn't have them identify every single thing that's in the textbook either. So now you work with what's specific to your class with the book, and now apply that to whatever kind of models you have or whatnot. Okay? Good. So this is the sample chapter, and I think this is one of the pages that you all have with you. I wanted students to be able to do stuff at home, and that's a real big issue we have with our lab environment, especially like things that you have to have in your, like bones, for example. Our bone identification list is not bone but features on bones is something like 208 or 209 features long, right? So it's not enough to know that this is a humerus. It's here's the humerus, and now find these 8 things that are on there, right? So if they don't have time to actually physically come into school and have that hands-on time with lab, like during study hall you might have, or after school or weekend, and I know this is different from high school to college, right? Your students aren't going to come on a Saturday and study your anatomy stuff, but I wanted them to be able to do stuff at home and find things at home and not need me there for that. So I started off every chapter with just a basic introduction. This is what the system does. I tried to kind of bold some things that seemed relevant the first time that they were introduced to topics and so forth. And then as we go through down to other images where we're actually going to label, I tried to kind of do the same thing. Bold structures that would be typical for them to find. So this is what I would do at the beginning of the lab. Get them in here. Today we're going to cover the digestive system. Here's the important roles. Here's where the stuff happens. This is where ingestion occurs. This is the difference between mechanical and chemical digestion. And here's absorption. And these nutrients get absorbed here while these get absorbed here and so forth. So that's all my intro that I would do.
And just real quick to interject, I didn't say this up front, but so Scott's written a book, a lab guide now, with Walters Clerk, which is another partners of ours. That'll be out it's for high school, and that's what he's showing you. It just finished. It's going to be published February, and it bundles in the online interactive as well. So we wanted to show you whether or not you use this textbook or lab guide, but the importance of how you can really drill down for anatomy and physiology and present it from a different model than the overwhelmed textbook. You don't even need a textbook with this lab guide. You can just have the lab guide and the online, and he has the introduction in here for you. So he's written it from the perspective of what he's learned over his 20-plus years of teaching and instruction to really simplify it, right? 20-plus,
no,
too much?
Yeah.
18?
That's how long I was in school, it seems, but yeah.
But anyhow, just if you didn't understand that, I apologize to say that up front. But anyhow, so this is one of our chapters actually that we're sharing with you that will be in the lab guide, and he's showing you the format and how he teaches, and now he's having a material that he actually can utilize, bringing in all of his strategies into one application. So.
And this is really all stuff I did before without the guide, you know. It's not like it's the magic guide and here we go. It's, you know, I would still do my introduction, but I would have to reference notes from their textbook or notes that I handed out in class, and we would do the same thing, right? And then we would use images, either images that came with our textbook from like the instructor resources, or maybe we just go to Google or YouTube and pull up a video or a picture, you know. So it's all the stuff that I used to do. It's just I was in a real fortunate position to be able to say, here, go do what you want and see if it makes sense. And so, you know, I like it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
All right.
So the actual image that would be in the lab guide itself doesn't look like this. Those two that are overlapped so tight there, it's a little bit bigger, and you have a little bit more room to write and to look at some things. But I go through and, bless you, essentially, instead of giving them like a printed out list, the students a printed out list with all of the features that were on there, I went over features I would typically have them find and then highlighted them in bold. So again, if I was teaching the class, and I do provide a list with them in addition to that, but it gives them that reference where they can go and read about that context, right? And then another thing is, can you go to the next slide and then come back for me? This is I just pulled this off the top of my head just yesterday or the day before, but differences between classes. If I have a non-major type class who doesn't have to get into the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts stuff, I might just provide them with this list on the left and have them go and identify those gross structures, because if I have 1 or 2 chapters in a general biology type course, we don't have time to get down into all those little bits and pieces, right? But from a nursing standpoint, even though we're dealing with like digestive system stuff, you're still going to see on that image some cardiovascular structures, you're still going to see some skeletal muscle images, you're still going to see some bony landmarks and so forth. So for that group, that list is a little bit more intense. We can still use the same product, you know, but tailor it to whatever the class is. So, yeah. So these are the images that they get blank, and then they go and use that list. And then what I actually have them do is write in what it is that they're looking for. So if this was like a standard text that we're still using today because this one's not out, you might see over in the margin somewhere like your main pancreatic duct, that might be, you know, written for you with a leader line going over to that duct, right? But now that they don't have that word to highlight, and they have to physically go and write it, and they have to spell it correctly, and now they have to go and point it right to where that structure is, now we start getting those questions. Well, is it this one, or is it this one, or is it this one? And now they're looking because they have to go out and get it. It's not just, you know, this exercise of highlighting and matching up your lists or whatnot. So I think making it interactive like that and bringing another sense into it, physically have them do something instead of just looking at that word, seems to help it stick just a little bit better. Okay.
And with our product, which is great, so can I just quickly show
Sure.
them? Like if we went into, so Adam Interactive Anatomy is the product that's bundled actually in this lab guide, but you'll notice you have the handout on the front page, which we thought it would be fun. We actually have all these images in our database, so the students can go and actually utilize it as a tool, as he was talking about in his small group, and actually go and identify all the structures in the list and make it interactive if they can't find it, or try to figure out what's associated. So if I want to find this image, it actually shows on this page how to find it. It says there's a key, so I go to Atlas Anatomy. I know it's digestive system, so I search for the digestive system and I hit search. And I know it's an illustration, it's not a cadaver or radiograph, so I hit that. And I can go right into...
click anterior, it'll help you.
Oh, interior, so I can...
Over. There you go.
Thank you. I can also pick my view, and then I can quickly go to... Where is it? Highlighting.
That's the one. Is that the one?
Yeah. And then I have the actual image on screen too to make it interactive if needed, if you have access to this. And they're pre-penned. Now you can remove the pens if you don't want the pens to be there. But when you actually click on, I'll come back here in a second. When you click on them, the images come up. You have multiple languages. I put 2 languages up if you have bilingual students. There's 9 languages available. So you just click on the different pens. You can also just keep the one pen you have highlighted if you want. You can export these images.
And exporting is what we did for years at my school, because we had access to the Atom product, and we would take the pictures that we were going to use for exams or the pictures that we were going to go over that week in lab, and then we would, you know, print them off.
Right. So it's a great tool too to reinforce if they're struggling, if they need help. You can actually allow them to go and identify the different structures.
See, that view right there drives me nuts. Like that's what most of the lab books are like, except it has all the words in the margin yet, you know, in addition to that. And it's real overwhelming, you know, and there's so much stuff. Do we have to know all this? And they're almost defeated before they even get going. Like, how am I going to learn all this stuff? And when you can say, look, you know, this is all I need you to know. This is where we're at in this class. Go find it. And then if that sea of pins, if you go back there, if that sea of pins is there, and it turns into a circus of let's push on 20 of those buttons before we get the one we want, you can go up top to that drop-down menu and search it by the list, you know. So again, because every student at your table is not doing the same thing, you have somebody who's doing the navigating and somebody who's physically drawing that image out, you know. So it's worked good for us in the years. Yes?
I think that's wonderful, because I don't know if anybody else has done this before, but I know just from practice, numerous years, I've had to make a copy, then take my whiteout pen.
That's right.
Yes.
And then go copy it. I mean, that's what you always have done that.
That's right.
Yes.
But again, like I said, times are changing, you know, like this stuff's all at the fingertips. And if the school has access to the product, then the students can access this from home. They don't have to be in your classroom to do it, right? They can go back. So it's nice.
Right. So you actually have it on here, so you can see, I mean, the first activity, I don't know, if you wanted to, you can actually, I mean, you can save this, but you can go ahead and actually label what you provided. So this is just showing you the format of how the lab guide will look.
And then just...
Individual pen up there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They can identify in upper left-hand corner the pen without the single pen.
Oh, this one?
Option.
Bridget, this one?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you pick the one you want, right, so you identify, and then you click on it,
it isolates.
ones. You can do multiple.
And you can drag that box.
If you just want to identify one structure, you can just have that one structure. We also have an annotation toolbar where you can actually add in your own pens too and draw on it. So you can put in your own text, you can draw, you can add pens, you can also customize it, and you can export any of these images. So once you customize it to what the view you want, you can then export and utilize in your handouts. And
can the kids go in and do this and send it to me?
The kids version doesn't allow for export, the instructor version only. But the kids, yes, the students can go in, they still have the same view and all the capabilities of the tools. Yeah, they could take a screenshot. That's what you can probably do.
There's no way that you could assess them by using this.
We actually have an assessment component called Lab Exercises, and it does have a full reporting, and it emails you the whole. No, it's a student version. It's called Lab Exercises, and it actually, Scott actually wrote this as well. And it's each body system, and it's a full. You go in and you identify the different structures. Some are drag and drop, some are fill in the blank, and at the end they get to review.
Do you get to say
what
you want on there, or is it?
This one you do not, but it's pretty simplified. I mean, you can speak to it because you wrote it in terms of number of structures. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not. I mean, if you just look at the.
It's kind of basic.
It's basic, yes.
It's not meant. It's really meant for both high school, community college level. It's not pre-med. If you can look here, just for the cardiovascular, it's very basic, but. You know, each one's different. This one has 18 questions at the end. They can go back and review each one they missed, and so forth, and the results get emailed to you.
And this, I'm sorry.
She said the results got emailed to you.
That's right.
Once they get finished.
Yes.
And with the physical lab manual portion, like when that's available at the end of each chapter, there's a series of review questions, review exercises. There's matching, there's labeling, there's some short answer type of things, and you could also have them, you know, do those and bring them with them, or do them in lab.
That's actually in your packet.
Yeah.
So if you want to go back to the lab guide here, so you just
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Go ahead.
And all of your images are just 2D?
We do have 3D.
3D?
So you'll see here there's some 3D anatomy. They don't require glasses. We have these 8 structures here. They allow you to rotate, zoom in, you know, depending on whatever system you're looking at. We find most of the time for demand, I mean the 3D has been popular, but we haven't had much more demand than other just to have some included in terms of teaching perspectives. It's wonderful for opportunity to explore and you know, rotate and view from different perspectives.
And there's still good videos and so forth too, like on YouTube and those kinds of things, you know, that you can go out and bring those in that you can supplement it with. It's not really designed to be an all-inclusive product for everybody to meet all your needs per se, but a good starting point anyway.
Yeah, and we have animations as well, so you can, we're going to get to that in a second. This one's on digestive.
That's okay.
But, so going back to, you know, the guide, so the first activity would be to identify. You want to?
Well, I mean,
using the list here, right, that you provided.
Yeah, if you know, if you're bored and you want to sit there and write stuff, you certainly can do that, right? The nice thing is, well, a nice thing I think is not having it so cookie cutter that you might have students label the same thing correctly and have their label at different places. Like so the pancreas, for example. If you just need the students to identify the pancreas, they can come up and, as you know, right, I mean, just pretty much point to any of this kind of glandular tissue in there and they're right on the money. If you need to break that down and you want to talk about the head of the pancreas and the tail of the pancreas and the body of the pancreas, right, then you could kind of take it to that next level. When you're dealing with like a pre-made image that already has those lines and those words on there, sometimes just because my students, maybe they're just aggressive because they're going to die without an A because they're not going to get in their program and the claws are out every week, you know, I got a cutthroat student body that I work with, but you know, if it's labeled in the book there as the pancreas, but on my exam I have a label here or something like that. Well, that's not where it was in the book.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what you know. It was a trick question. You know, I don't have to trick you though. Like you know, like it's right. So all of a sudden now you have them working in their pairs or in their groups or whatever the case is, and they all have it labeled correctly, and it's all just a little bit different. You know, and then you take that opportunity to explain to them. Well, the pancreas in a 4-year-old is going to look a little bit different than the pancreas in the 30-year-old, and I talk about again because I have nursing students giving injections, for example, you know, that if you're going to give an injection in a gluteus medius, we're going to use some of these bony landmarks that we found in lab to get you there. We'll find this greater trochanter in the posterior superiliac spine, and because those bony landmarks won't move, right? But again, a 4-year-old butt or a 20-year-old 100-pound butt compared to a 20-year-old 300-pound butt compared to an 80-year-old butt, their cheeks down behind their knee, depending, right? Like things change, and you have to be able to fly with that, you know. And so while anatomy is tangible and doesn't change, like patients change, you know, and so it gets them in the habit of that as well. Well, you can both be right. So anyway, so you can tailor the list like we did on that previous slide, and then you determine what's correct and what's not correct, you know. And then if you want another view, right, because that's okay. The image that that Bridget pulled up with all those leader lines on there, that was from a special section of Adam Interactive Anatomy. That's all what are called Atlas Anatomy images. So they're images that are in there, the pins are set, and that's all there is to it. But there's opportunities to go in different parts of AIA and see a similar image. So I don't know how close you looked or even if you can tell what the size of it, but these two images are different. This is in the image bank. This image over here is in the dissectable anatomy section. So then I put keys together, whether you're looking at the male model or you're looking at the female model, so students can go and get another similar view to what it is that they're looking at, but they might be able to explore and go a little bit further, because in that first image it was focused on a digestive system, where if you do the dissectable anatomy, you'll be able to tag and look at other organ systems that are around and relative to the ones that you're looking for.
So this is, yeah, our dissectable anatomy. There's over 300 layers, 20,000 structures, all labeled, once again, 9 languages. And he put the exact layer there, so it was 215, I believe, if I can get there.
Yeah, there you go.
So the students can identify very easily, it notes on here how to get in there and find that structure if you need reinforcement, or you want to see it from the whole perspective of the whole body, right? So we just saw it as an individual image, but now you actually have the full body. And we have both male and female. We also have all the different views, as well as multiple skin tones too. So here we go.
And from an identification standpoint, we can still click on here, right?
So here we just click, and I put up 2 languages. You can have as many as you want. You can only have English up there. I just happen to include 2 just to show you the capabilities. Once again, you
But do you, I'm sorry. No, I don't know where you clicked before. Like, could you go like in here and click somewhere? No, go maybe down here somewhere. There you go. When we use the online product in our lab, this snaps students out sometimes as well. Like, all I'm looking for is a duodenum. Do I need to know it's the horizontal third part of the duodenum? You know, like, we don't get into that tiny differentiation. It's just, you know, find the duodenum, realize it's the proximal part of the small intestine, it connects to the pyloric part of the stomach, and go about your business. But you can search, right? You can still go up into that drop-down bar. You can use a search feature and search in duodenum, and what it'll do is tell you all the different parts in that product where you can find it. So there's many ways to get students where you need them to go. The actual AIA online stuff is, I don't even probably use half of what it's capable of, just because my student body doesn't need to get there. But like I said, I found that too with print products, where I got lab, even our textbooks, you know, and some teachers do it, and it depends if you have the perfect book or not. But, you know, I've had those teachers that said, well, go read, you know, chapter 8, and you have to know everything in chapter 8 and everything in the, make sure you know those diagrams and make sure you know those figures. It's all testable, and you never had time to talk about that in lecture, and now that the students put all that energy into learning all that stuff, you go take the test and that junk's not on there, you know. So I think, like, learning A&P is almost like learning a whole new language. You know, you get all these word roots and what, you know, you want me to memorize all this stuff, what does it even mean? So I tend to, even my advanced students, I point them where I want them to go. I realize that their time's valuable, and I don't try to give them busy work. I try to give them the questions, even with the review exercises, questions that are pointed, that are like practical, ones that they'll get something out of, instead of go and do this work because you have nothing better to do at home, or whatever the case is.
Right. And once again with this, you know, depending on what you're identifying, you can customize the image, export it, highlight just a particular structure. You can quickly switch from male to female. You can also view by different views, also by systems. You could just highlight all the digestive system elements here as well. And my internet's been a little bit slow, so there we go. Some of it's coming up now. So there's a lot of flexibility, but you can annotate on it as well. You can write, you can add in your own, you can highlight what you like, export. So there's a lot of flexibility here, multiple languages, as I said. So it's a great enhancement.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
You know, all of us are preparing our students for college, and most of the students that I have in anatomy they want to do something in the medical field, they may not be sure what, and it's always hard for me to decide, well, what structures will they need to know when they're in college? Because I don't want to overdo it, because then it's just more trouble for me. And a lot of times I have seniors and they're worried about GPA, but I don't want to underdo it either, and then them say, well, Miss Schaeffer, we didn't learn, near what we needed to learn for our first few years in college.
Right.
So I really appreciated the list you had earlier, where it was just like maybe your regular, like, students versus your honor students. So do you have, a list kind of like that?
I don't, or there's not one there. It's just, again, kind of trial and error. And with me being at the community college level and teaching in so many different ones, I've seen what other schools do, so at least I have that kind of barometer. But I would say that this book is written, to the level of a high school type of high school honors, or even maybe like a massage therapy type program, certificate-based program, or whatever the case is. So when you go through and you read the introductory stuff with the bolds that are on there and so forth, those are words that are pretty standard that I've seen come up, regardless of the school that I was teaching at. And then some schools, depending what their focus is, they'll go from there,
I'm in the same situation she's in, and my anatomy class is an elective.
Right.
And so I have students who want to go to med school, but I also have students who just want to learn about their body.
That's right.
So I try to put it in a midline, not make it so easy that the medical students don't get enough information, but not so hard that the kids who want to learn about their bodies can't succeed.
Well, see, I always bring stuff in anyway, right, from outside. So I still haven't found the perfect book. So this is a good starting point.
Just by the textbook, a lot of interactive models and things. They're using a college level textbook. Right. So I just say, okay, we're not going by the textbook. We're going by what I tell you that we're learning, and I will reference the book.
And I also try.
Actually, sorry to interrupt.
No.
One of the things I was thinking is there's a site called The Point that will be a reference material for this lab guide, and that's maybe something we could add as a teacher resource, is helpful labeling lists for different levels. It's called The Point, which will come with the lab guide. It's a full website. It's Walter Krupler's Health Lippincott. You're familiar with them as a publisher. They have a site which will be provided, teaching notes from Scott, as well as videos, a variety of material, references. But that's maybe something we could put some thought around.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've had similar requests before, and I have found you can do like easy even Googling, for sample syllabi from like colleges or universities in your state, or you can often find, their course outline. But I can also help you with that if anyone wants to talk to me. I'm happy to reach out, and like Bridget said, I think it's a good idea to put some sample list or syllabi, on The Point for community college, universities, different level programs.
Yeah. Also, just to point out in our product, we do have clinical illustrations by medical specialty. So it comes with the product, all these components. And what's nice is you can search by the different medical specialties. So if you're going into dentistry, you can hit search, and all the images that are associated with it come up. Now, we don't have all of them, but we have a nice collection. So that's a good little reference point too, that it allows you to search by medical specialty on here. So that's always helpful. Same thing with our animations. If there's a certain, specialty. So that's a nice little starting point.
No, this gentleman had a question.
That is really great. Especially with the Hispanic. I've just now had my first Hispanic that's only been in the United States 1 year, so she's very limited. So that aspect I love. But so much at least in my area, we've got a SIG grant, and we have to differentiate everything. So, and I've also got my first special needs student.
Right.
How do I differentiate? I realize that's my own personal thing that I'm going to have to work out. But differentiation, all within the same classroom, because I've got one valedictorian in the same class.
Right. It's
How do
tough.
it's like, good grief.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yet I've got to make it competitive for her, and yet I've got to keep it low enough for him, and working together, and it's just, I'm finding myself up 3 and 4 hours just about every night trying to figure this thing out.
Wow.
Well, I think a starting point of different lists is a great idea for you, especially special needs. You can limit it, and also maybe the special needs takes a screenshot of just the images and doesn't have to. I don't know if it's a handwriting, motor, whatever their
Right.
needs, their modifications are needed. So you could do something like that where they wouldn't maybe have to fill in a small space, but they have actually filled it on the computer.
Is this iPad?
The iPad version will be coming out in fall. Right now, you can probably go through the alternative browsers and get it to somewhat work, but in terms of real functionality, it's still not quite, it wouldn't be as good until we have our mobile version. The hope is fall, yeah.
Okay.
But if you have a laptop, ideally you want a bigger screen anyhow, especially with the body system. It's better to identify, but we know that's the future.
We're getting class set for science department of iPads.
Yeah, and we hear it every day, grants for that.
I want this really bad.
Yeah. No, we want you to have it too.
There's to the left.
Believe me, it's not for a lack of not wanting to be there. Unfortunately, in the corporate world of development, it sometimes takes longer than we would like. So we understand.
So my school does have this. Can students access it at home, or do they have to be on the school site?
No, they can access it anywhere.
They have the login information, because I think we have 15 students.
Yeah, so basically once the 16 person try to sign on, they'd have to wait until someone else signs off. But yeah, they can use it anywhere, anytime. Okay. It's either user password protected, or it can be an IP authentication, which means like if it's a site license link from the site, you just need internet.
And I'm not sure at what level this is happening at the high school. I know at our community college level, there's been a push recently to go from teacher-centered or focused learning to student-centered, right? Instead of having them sitting up here with a talking head in front of them. And you may have heard this term of flipping the classroom. I don't know if that's something that's come, but where we teach students in the classroom and then send them home to do 2 hours worth of homework or whatever the case is. This concept of flipping the classroom is that they go home and do the classwork preparation instead of homework, and then when they're with you in class, that's when you have that opportunity to help them with their homework, if you will, which kind of addresses some of the issues we were talking about, the valedictorian or the special. If I'm going to give a lecture and I have to lecture and have that lecture understood from some kind of a learning disability standpoint up to class valedictorian, I got to keep it in the middle and potentially lose both ends, right? But if I can give them the assignment, send them home and have them do it, and then come back into the classroom and then help assimilate that and work them through, now I can spend time with you at this table and go over and now help elevate that person. And so I'm not sure where we're going with that really. I don't know from an A&P standpoint how, if I have them do all the work at home, how I can occupy that class time. But I know that's a movement that I've been hearing a little bit about. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to put this background material in the book, because when students have access to it at home, they can go home and actually physically do lab stuff, do virtual dissection, and do homework questions, and go and work on research-based products, because they have all that stuff. They don't have to be in your classroom when you might only have at them for 45 minutes or something like that, So it's really meant to empower the student and get them doing it instead of just sitting back and seeing if through osmosis you can hammer it in there or something. Well, I guess osmosis would draw it in, you wouldn't
Everybody's
hammer it.
hearing about the flipped classroom, basically that's what he's described. It's been around forever, but now we've defined it. So that's the importance, more in-time class to actually do the hands-on question exploration and more review, learn at home, which is becoming the trend,
There's a question.
And when the students log on, they don't have just full access to everything, is that correct? Do you have to, I see over there on the left, you have anatomy tests.
These are some add-ons that actually are additional content, but that wouldn't be turned on. It's actually, I should have logged in with a different view so you would see all that. but
It would go down
They don't have
encyclopedia.
access to just like certain
Whatever you
things, like if I
purchase.
wanted to download or upload a test or something.
Yeah, they wouldn't-
for them
they wouldn't be able to view it,
Then I
yeah.
would have to upload it and then say, this is your assignment.
Yeah, for the anatomy test, it actually is a bank of 15,500 structures. Probably, it's way more than you would need in high school, so it tends to be more of a college level, and it allows for instructors to create their own tests. And they would,
So you can create your own test.
with that product. It's an individual product, actually, and a lot of professors like it, and students like it too, because at the higher level, they like to create their own tests and study. So you can just study a region and create your test, and it automatically generates tests randomly. So it's a good practice. So, you know, that wouldn't be on there. Most of this wouldn't be on there. The main difference between the instructor version versus a student is the instructor can create curriculum. We actually have something called Curriculum Builder that allows you to make individual lesson plans that maintain the dynamic aspect. So it's not like a flat PowerPoint. Now you can keep the dissectable anatomy or that image that you put in there and actually have the pins and the movement of the 3D or the animation in it. The students can't create their own curriculum. That's the difference. And also, they can't export images. And then in terms of licensing agreements, of course, the instructor has the rights to use these images, all the materials, and all their instruction. So it's just a different license agreement as well.
Okay.
But that's the main difference. In terms of the look and feel, they pretty much see the same thing. There's just more capabilities.
When you purchase this, is it like a lifetime purchase or do you pay a yearly?
It's an annual subscription, it's all online, which allows for us to upgrade and
X
change.
amount of students?
You can purchase by instructor, by number of students. It could be a site license. With this lab guide bundle, it's actually a very affordable price. It's a student access to all of everything from, you see up here, from dissectable anatomy down to curriculum builder. They get all of that content, plus the full lab guide, which goes over all the body systems, for $109.
And that's for the teacher, and then all the students go log on?
Everything. Well, per student's $109.
Per student?
Yes, $109 per student. But that includes, so now you don't, if you don't have it, you don't need a textbook, right? All you need is really this lab guide, because he has the introduction of each body system. You have the online materials. So that's pretty much for every student, you know, for a year.
So
Or you could do-
what package, do you have the package, like, do you have any package deals, like with the one instructor and X amount of kids or students or whatever?
Well,
Like,
we
how-
do
or
do,
you
we
have
do
to
for just our online product. We haven't thought about putting that together. Like I said, it's getting published February 1, so it'll be on the market February 1. Pre-sales will start in December, but I don't know, we haven't discussed that. So we can look at putting like a class for 30 together for high school.
So right now, it's just $109 per student.
Per student. The lab guide's just $54. If you didn't want the online, you could just get the lab guide.
And then how much is it for instructors?
The instructor version, I don't think we're charging. We're not charging for instructor. You would just get all the free references on the point.
So I could just purchase this myself and just use this in the classroom?
You can just purchase our version of our online product, yes, in the classroom.
Okay.
How much is the online product?
The online product for instructor use, so it gives you the right to reproduce everything and utilize it, is $399 for a full year. So you can use it with, however you like in the classroom. A student, but we have packages where we can give, 10, 20, 30 users. You can use it multiple periods throughout the day. You can buy for each class. So it just depends on what you're looking for.
The Inside Out, is that included in this?
Adam Inside Out is our middle school product, which actually can be used in high school too.
I was going to say it's
lower level. What's great about that product is it's full of animations and it's told in a storybook format. So it actually takes you through a man and woman, what they experience. So the digestive system, it tells a story how they go out to the restaurant, what they order, what they eat, how it goes through each body, each portion of the digestive system and what they experience. So that's definitely not meant for, it is used in high school. What we find, and actually that's a great product for your special education student, as I'm thinking. What's nice, for anatomy and physiology class, sometimes teachers find that it's not high enough level. But if you want a real basic product, it's great in high school too. It still comes with dissectable anatomy. The difference is instead of having 20,000 structures, you have 4,000 and less views. But it still is probably ample. So that's, a great, Adam Inside is a great product. It's been around forever. People love it. both products are award-winning. It's just a matter what your level is, and that's the thing. If you filled out that form, we're going to send you a free trial, so you can look at both. We'll send both products to you, so you can look at it and explore and see which one would be.
It's a lot more affordable, I think.
It is more affordable because it's less content.
Right.
It is. It's a site license wide. It's $550 for a small school.
I'm just because I'm curious of how a school would be able to afford that every year for their students. But if you took it on like a district level, do y'all have district?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we have discounts for district level. Absolutely.
And it would say, I'm sorry, it also would depend on what resources you already have. You know, is this going to be something that you add into your current curriculum, or is this going to take the place of something, you know, or...
books are just so I have the same book now.
Yeah.
That's the thing, you have the books for 17 years.
Yeah.
It's $5 a kid versus...
But we're also looking at, you know, trying to identify coming up with a more specific high school product in the sense of what's really utilized. Like, you know, we want feedback. Are you only using the dissectable anatomy? Would you want to just buy that portion? You know, because we can sell just that portion if that's more of just the only portion you want, you know. So any feedback, it's like if there's just, so we can turn off any of these elements. So actually, I'm sure you all know Carolina Biological. I'll put a plug in for them. Our products are sold there by, for the individual instructor. You can buy just, actually it's not, it'll be live. We had to bring it down for a little bit. It'll be live in a couple weeks. But you can buy just the dissectable anatomy or, you know, different parts of our product for, you know, very small price point. You're looking at $30 for just, you know, the dissectable anatomy. I forget the exact price, but it's right around there. So you can just buy portions of our product. So it's really a matter of what you utilize in the classroom and feedback. We can always, you know, we like to know what you're using so we can customize a package that meets your needs. If we're giving you extra resources that are a waste of time and we're charging for them, then that doesn't make sense. So.
The book that you wrote, is it only available through your company, or is that?
No, Adam Education will sell it. Also, Walters Clerk sells it. It'll be probably on Amazon. It'll be on Amazon.
What's the name?
There's the lab guide, right?
Well, yeah, I think we still got a couple slides.
Yep.
We'll wrap through that because
go ahead and get
we're down about.
Question. Sorry.
But that might come up. Maybe that'll answer your question.
Sorry, did we? Oh.
My question was, this focus is anatomy, but 90% of my standard incorporates physiology. And is the lab guide just anatomy, or are you bringing in the physiological components? Because if this is just anatomy, my school district won't go for it.
Good question.
It's definitely weighted in favor of anatomy, no doubt. But at my school, when we used the Adam interactive anatomy in the past, you point and click and point and click and point and click, and that's unless you go to that encyclopedia feature and then, you know, you start delving through that stuff.
I mean, for instance, my standard is students will understand and explain how the skeletal and muscular system combine together to perform motion. Nowhere in my standard does it say where I need to teach my students the bones.
That's right.
But I have to, because they won't understand how movement occurs.
But when you go into the muscular chapter and it discusses the types of muscles and how they're named and what tendons do and what ligaments do, and so that element is in there, right? Instead of just saying, here's the gallbladder and the cystic duct, well, this stores bile that was made in the liver and is used to emulsify.
How is your lab manual worded? You know, would I have to, and it sounds like, not that, and that's how I was taught anatomy, but the way that they're wanting us to change it now, that I would have to do a lot of supplementation to your lab manual to meet my standards in the state of Georgia.
And it depends, again, what that standard is, but the reason that I put that, this is a, no, that's okay. This is a 4th edition of this book, and it's the first one I was associated with. And in the 3rd edition, there was a lot of exploratory based questions, you know, answer this, what does this do, what makes the, but there was nowhere in the guide that provided that information. So by putting that background physiology information in there, it helps with that integration. Now, is it going to be enough to handle an honors or an AP course? You know, you may have to supplement, but again, in my experience, which, you know, there's certainly a bazillion of them different than mine, I bring that junk in anyway, you know, and so But yeah, it's not.
If you look at the learning objectives, you do on every chapter spot, you do point out, identify the organs, provide examples of functions for the organs for the digestive system. So it is integrated in there, as well as, which will bring us to our next slide, is providing the clinical application portion, which is important. And that's kind of the big way of teaching now anatomy and physiology, is focusing on the clinical application element.
And this was good feedback that we got from book reviewers and so forth as well. Like, how can I put this into my everyday life, you know? And so each of the chapters, I brought in, I don't know, anywhere from like 3 to 6, depending how long the chapter was, clinical-based applications. Classic asthma, diabetes mellitus versus diabetes insipidus, you know, I mean, those types of things. And then there's, by following the little, like the little menu, you know, and chasing down that information, you can go and explore deeper if you choose to do that. But we did bring clinical applications into every chapter. So, and I tried to bring things that weren't like out in left field, you know, celiac disease maybe, or something that you'll see more commonly. And that helped bring it together a little bit.
Right.
We only got a couple minutes. This is an example at the end of each chapter. Some people are talking about, can I email that in or can I answer that and get it to the teacher or whatnot? So at the end of each chapter, I kept the format the same in each one. Just started with some real basic kind of matching stuff, and then there's some labeling. Is there, I think the next image, Bridget, is. So this one, because this is a review exercise base, this one has a list with it. And you could add, you know, to that list, like, but this is for them to go home now and maybe turn in for credit or homework, or to make sure that they did it, you know. Whereas when you go through the actual lab activities, those word banks aren't there. They'd have to go back through the reading, find those words in bold, or the list that you pulled in for them, you know, bring that in. And that's something that you would tailor specifically to that lab exercise. But just so at least there's something. So the review exercise at the end is not going to have every picture that was in that whole chapter. But, you know, 2 or 3 images that are kind of broad scope pictures that you can find. Like we have an image that we don't have it here in your handout, but an image of the salivary glands. And, you know, not much reason to bring a salivary gland image in here and have them take up half a page and label 3 structures, you know. So I tried to at least bring some images in that had multiple. So there's matching, and then there's labeling. And do we have the other one or no? That might be all we brought. And there's also short answer type questions, you know, where they have to go and physically write it in and search it out. But I tried to make sure that the questions I put in there, they wouldn't have to leave the text to find that, you know. So if you assign them that homework at the end of the chapter, they absolutely will be able to go back and get those answers from the reading. So the textbook can kind of stand alone by itself, the lab guide, or certainly Adam can stand, you know, by itself, or they integrate nicely or whatever. But that's in every chapter, and there's the title of the book.